Hello friends, welcome back to my channel Homeopathy Super Sessions by Dr. Jagose. Today I'll be telling you in short the evolution of a disease in homeopathy. So now let us see how a disease evolves in homeopathy, because if you know the evolution of the disease, you'll be able to understand the different aspects of organon in a much better manner. So let us move forward. Disease in homeopathy, they are always dynamic in nature. So you all know that in homeopathy, all the diseases are dynamic in nature. It is a deviation from the old school wherein they had a materialistic concept. So the old school believed that the disease was because of some causative organism which caused the disease. So they had given certain names to the materialistic concept. That is, they were hunting for what? They were hunting for the materia peccans, or the material cause of the disease. Or they also coined the word as prima causa morbi. That is the primary cause of the morbid disease. Or they coined another word, causa morbicum chronicorium. That is the cause of the morbid chronic disease. So they always believed in finding out the material cause of the disease. They never looked beyond the material cause, that is, into the dynamic aspect in which homeopathy firmly believes in. Since the disease is dynamic in nature, life also is never static. It is always dynamic in nature. So life is always in a flow, or it goes in a pattern of a flow. Hence, life and disease are always in continuous motion. Since life is in continuous motion, and all the other factors which are living and are going on in the universe, they are also in continuous motion. So therefore, in homeopathy, susceptibility plays a very important part in the disease manifestation. So susceptibility also flows along with the life and the disease force. It plays an important part in determining the sequential evolutionary march of events in the patient's life. So life is a flow. In one's life, we have certain important epochs or certain important landmarks or situations in one's life which are taken to be of great importance, right from the birth till the death. For example, important epochs are after giving, after being born, you are an neonate. After 1 year, you're an infant. Then you go into adolescent. Then you go into, so before that, childhood, then adolescent. Then you go into an adulthood. Then you go into old age. And ultimately, that will lead to death. So this is an important, these are all the important epochs in one's life in which, while taking the case, we give importance to. So until and unless you are susceptible, the disease will not take place. So hence susceptibility is very important with regard to homeopathy. Thus in health, equilibrium is maintained. There is order and harmony. So as you all know, in a healthy state, the vital force is in harmony with the trinity of life, that is the mind, body, and the soul. So if everything is functioning properly in conjunction with all other factors, then health is maintained, or in short, there is harmony. Whereas disease is just an opposite state. Out here, instead of equilibrium, you get disequilibrium. Instead of order, you get disorder. And instead of harmony, you get disharmony. Therefore, in the disease state, it is characterized by disequilibrium, disorder, and disharmony. Therefore, the homeostasis is not maintained and the internal milieu is in a chaotic state. So therefore, the homeostasis maintained by the psychoneuroendocrine axis and the reticuloendothelial system, that is not maintained, it is disturbed, as a result of which the signs and symptoms appear. Or in other words, the internal milieu is in a chaotic state. So now, this is very important. We have to know this sequential events of how a disease evolves. So a disease evolves from the dynamic level or the preclinical or the pre-functional level. Now at the dynamic level, it becomes very difficult to identify the derangement. But however, there are certain methods which are used in order to find out the dynamic derangement. They are dowsing, also known as radiesthesia, and the use of the psychometer. So, in the olden days, there were persons who used to do dowsing, or they were known as dowsers, who used to tell you whether in a specific area you would find water or oil. So they used to douse and tell the person to dig out here, you would get water, dig on the other side, you would get oil. So this is a method whereby you can distinguish what you are finding or what you want to find. So in today's world, there are very few people who does all these things of dowsing. Okay, they are known as dowsers, and they use the cards which are known as the dowsing cards, and a pendulum is there which is made up of a heavy object, any heavy object, and it is suspended by a string. This object and the patient's photograph is kept in front of. The patient is not necessarily in front of the dowser. It can be, the dowser can be in one country and the patient can be in another country also, or it can be from faraway places. And the photograph is kept in the dowsing card, and the pendulum and the dowser talks to the pendulum saying that, tell me what is wrong with the patient. And the dowser suspends the pendulum with the help of the string, and his hand is very steady. He doesn't move his hands, and the pendulum itself will start moving on these cards in an haphazard manner, and then it will localize itself to one point and it will point to one card. So that card will tell you what is wrong with the person. So by dowsing, you won't be able to make out the exact diagnosis, but at least you'll be able to find out what is the system, what is the part, what is the location, or what is the organ involved. Now, psychometer, it is a science of reading the past, and it was invented by Carl Jung in 1906. It is a device to measure the mental or the psychological activity of the patient. So this is also another method in the olden days they used to do to see the derangement at the dynamic level. In today's world, you can also add one more point, that is the Kirlian photography or the aura scan. So there's a special camera known as the Kirlian photography or the Kirlian camera, and the aura of your fingertips and your toe tips are taken on a photographic paper, and it is developed, it is put in a photographic solution and developed in a dark room. And just like in acupuncture, your tips of your fingers and your tips of your toes each represent certain body area or location in the body. So similarly out here, when the photograph is developed, the aura comes saying that what is wrong and in which area it is wrong. So basically you can get a deficiency pattern, you can get a toxic pattern, or you can get a degenerative pattern in the Kirlian photography. And accordingly, you can judge what is wrong with the patient on a very broad scale. Then you can investigate further into whatever part or organ is affected and find out the correct diagnosis. So the Kirlian pattern, the Kirlian photography will also help you to assess the usefulness or the effectiveness of the homeopathic medicine. Suppose before giving the homeopathic medicine, you take the patient's Kirlian photograph and you find out there's a deficiency pattern. You take the full case and you administer the remedy, and Again, you take the Kirlian photography. You will notice that this deficiency pattern will disappear or it will not be seen, and a normal aura will be seen. That shows that our medicines are acting on a dynamic level, and the pattern of deficiency which was there before taking the medicine has disappeared after taking the medicine, or the the degenerative pattern has now gone to the deficiency pattern, showing that our medicines act at a very deep level of the dynamic level, and now the patient has come into the deficiency level or the functional level. So this is also a proof through Kirlian photography, which will tell you our medicines, how powerfully they act, how powerfully they act. And one more thing which is not mentioned here is the aura scan also. Okay, so they scan your whole body, the aura of your body. See, each one has its own aura, right or not? A clown will have a happy aura. A villain or a dacoit will have a very frightful aura. And a person who's happy-go-lucky also will have a good aura. Whereas a person who goes on grumbling and finding fault will have not such a good aura. So just by looking at the person, we can find out, or we can begin to like or dislike the person. Why? Because of the person's aura. So aura scan is done taking into account the different chakras in the body, and whatever chakra is deficient or whatever aura your chakra is deficient in, that it will identify that. So the disease then travels. So at the dynamic level, basically, you cannot identify it except through these methods which I have told you. Now, as the disease moves on from the preclinical or the pre-functional level to the functional level, also known as the prodromal stage, or the stage of indisposition. Out here, you definitely get symptoms, and but they may not be very characteristic in order to prescribe. And if you do the blood test or the biochemical investigations, everything is normal. So out here, you do not know the exact diagnosis of the patient, but there are some symptoms to tell you that the patient is not healthy. And these symptoms which are exhibited are not PQRS in nature, or they are common in nature. Hence, it is not possible for the homeopathic physician to come to a pinpoint diagnosis. However, he could have a differential diagnosis, but also that will be difficult. Now, as the disease advances from the prodromal stage to the structural changes, out here, definitely we are getting the location, the organ, or the system, or the part of the body involved. And out here, we are getting certain changes in the organs, part, or system, or the location, which are definitely abnormal. And if we do the investigations, say example, biochemical investigations or other investigations as per the case, we can definitely come to know what is wrong with the patient through these tests and also through the history of the patient. So out here, the structural changes are there, and the symptom exhibited again will be common, plus or they'll be intermingled with a few characteristic symptoms. And at this stage, the definite diagnosis can be made. So at the functional level, you're getting an altered physiology, and at the structural level, you're getting altered anatomy. That is nothing but the pathology what you are seeing. Now the pathology in the early stages, it could be reversible, but as the disease advances, then it may become irreversible. So if the patient comes to us in the early stage, whereby the pathology is not advanced, or it may be at a borderline level if the patient comes midway to us, or It may come, or the pathology will become irreversible when the patient comes to us very late or at the last stage of the disease. Okay, so this is how the disease evolved. Now, something about the word indisposition. Out here, Dr. Kent has given in his lectures something about indisposition. He said the prodromal phase can also be known as a phase of indisposition, wherein in indisposition, the cause will lie external, and in a true chronic disease, the cause will lie internal. So this is the important differentiating factor to identify an indisposition from a true chronic disease, because many a times indisposition they mimic true chronic disease, and if you are not aware or if you're not a good observer, you may miss it out. So therefore, as I told you, the cause of indisposition lies external, and in a true chronic disease the cause lies internal, that is in the form of miasms. So in an indisposition, if you remove the external cause, the indisposition will spontaneously cease. Whereas in a true chronic disease, you may be having an exciting cause or a precipitating cause. Even after removing that, the disease is still present. To show that, so that tells you that this is a true chronic disease and it's not an indisposition. You have to take the case, have to give an internal medicine, dynamize homeopathic medicine in order to completely eradicate it. So therefore, the disease evolves from the dynamic level to the functional level to the structural level and the pathological level. So as I told you, it goes from the dynamic pre-functional plane to the functional plane to the structural plane and development of pathology. Pathology in itself could be reversible or irreversible. Well, this is one concept of the evolution of the disease. Another concept which is quite interesting to note that the evolution of the disease can be described through the predisposition, disposition, diathesis, disease expression, and phases at different levels. So, if you would study the disease in this area or in this way, that is the predisposition, the disposition, the diathesis, the expression, and the expression or the phases or the expression of the phases at different levels, you will be in a better understanding, rather you'll get a better understanding of how a disease evolves in homeopathy. Hence, let us familiarize ourselves with the meaning of the different terminologies used with reference to evolution of the disease. Now at the end, I'll show you a big flow chart which will explain all this, so it will become much more clearer. So let us see, what does the word predisposition mean? It comes from the Latin pre, meaning before, and disponere, meaning to put in order, arrange, or distribute. So it is a Latin word saying that there is something which is occurring before, which you have to give importance to. If you have a predisposition to think or act in a certain way, you can anticipate your reaction before it happens. So therefore, if you have a predisposition, if you think in a certain way or if you act in a certain way, that means what? You can anticipate what is going to happen. Now suppose you're walking in a dark alley and you have a and you feel some eeriness or creepiness which is going to come up. So now you are anticipating it beforehand and you are prepared for whatever circumstance you are going to face. All right, so suppose somebody comes to attack you, so you're already prepared, you may be able to defend yourself. So this it means to think or act in a certain way. So in homeopathy, with respect to the evolution of the disease, predisposition, it means that it is a genetic trait in which you are likely to inherit the trait from your parents. So any genetic predisposition or any genetic diseases are there which may be transferred to you because of the trait is inherited. So therefore, certain examples of a predisposition could be a genetic predisposition to diabetes or to any other illness. So in predisposition, basically, we are trying to find out all the inherited diseases of an individual. So by knowing the predisposition, we can identify the fundamental mechanism of the patient. That is the root cause of the disease of which the patient may be suffering from. So the predisposition can be seen in a case through the family history and supported by the past history of the patient. So that is very important. So the predisposition is very important because it helps us to identify the fundamental mechanism, and it is generally an hereditary trait. Now, disposition, it means a person's inherent quality of mind and physical character. So the disposition will mean, number one, the qualities or the symptoms of pertaining to the mind, and symptoms pertaining to the physical characteristic of the patient or of the person. That means how does he look? Is he tall? Is he thin? Is he obese? So on and so forth. So out here we are getting the in disposition, we are getting the appearance of the patient, we are getting the symptoms on the level of the mind, and symptoms on the physical level. Physical level meaning from the personal history of the patient, like the appetite, thirst, elimination, etc. So the disposition synonyms can be termed as a temperament, a character, a personality, the nature, type or typology, and constitution of the individual. So these are all other synonyms for disposition. So basically, again, to remind you, in disposition, we have to see what is the constitution of the patient or the physical makeup of the patient, what are the symptoms pertaining to the mind, and what are the symptoms pertaining to the physical character of the individual. Now, disposition, it is only partly inherited. Please remember that, as compared to disposition, which is fully inherited, disposition is only partly inherited, and it is mainly acquired through the person's walk on life, and according the person will develop good or bad qualities or traits. So disposition to a small extent is partly inherited, but the majority of it is acquired as to how the patient is brought up in life, and accordingly what characters or what traits or what type of personality he will exhibit. So the personality traits could be good or bad, or the qualities which he develops could be good qualities or bad qualities. It all depends upon the upbringing of the child, of the person. Therefore, in indisposition, we will take into consideration the appearance of the patient, so the mental makeup and physical general characteristics. Sorry, it's a mistake out here. It should be disposition, not indisposition. So therefore, in a disposition, we have to take, as I told you, how the patient looks, its mental makeup, and its physical general characteristics. So first we have the disposition, that is a fundamental mechanism. Below that we have the predisposition, that is a fundamental mechanism. Then the disposition, that is a type, typology, constitution, personality or character of the person, which is exhibited through the signs and symptoms. Then we have got diathesis. Now, diathesis is just uh, a word which is used in theory. It is very difficult to identify the diathesis in practice. So as per the International Directory of Homeopathy 2000, it has been defined as a pattern of disorder characteristics of an underlying disease trait. So basically, what is diathesis? Diathesis is nothing but a more having a particular trait of a particular disease. It will get clear as I go on. It may be regarded as a predisposition to a particular named disease. Now, disease is developed due to exact response to the environmental factors. You all know that the disease is developed because of the constant bombarding of the individual by the environmental factors. So, when the adaptability is lost, the vital force can no longer resist the changes. it succumbs to the noxious environmental influences and the disease sets in. Dr. M.L. Dhavle, he opines that diathesis represents certain deviations in susceptibility, which is not sufficiently marked to merit the label of the disease. So this is very important. So there are deviations of susceptibility wherein you cannot diagnose a condition or you cannot label this particular condition as a disease condition, and in which the response to environmental stimulus tends to be exaggerated or erratic. So naturally, this will be in response to the environmental stimulus depending upon the state of susceptibility. It can also be defined as the state or condition of the body or a combination of attributes in an individual causing a susceptibility to a disease. That means what? In diathesis, we say that the patient or the person has a certain type of diathesis. We say that because of the predisposition of the patient obtained through the fundamental miasm, also supported by the disposition, that is partly it is inherited, mainly it is acquired. So suppose we identify the miasm as psychosis miasm or psychotic miasm, and we say this person has a psychotic diathesis. Why? Because there's a tendency to retain, because in the psychotic miasm, what happens? There's a tendency to retain water in tissues, to produce small cutaneous fig-like tumors, chronic cata of mucous membranes, and also the slow progressive development of disease and other symptoms. So basically, what are we getting? We are getting the traits of the psychotic miasm in the person. So the traits of the miasm will depict the diathesis. The diathesis will not tell us the exact diagnosis of the disease, but will tell you that this person will be more prone to such and such a condition depending upon what miasm is at the background. So in other words, diathesis is a phase of precarious balance in which a slight push is sufficient to topple down the system into the slippery inclined plane of disease, leading to final destruction. So it is a very delicate balance. It will depend upon it will depend upon the environmental factors as well as the miasmatic factors, and whatever is strong, it will topple the system into the final destruction or the disease condition. Thus, diathesis is a delicate balance and can be compared to a seesaw in which the equilibrium is required to maintain the balance. So just like in a playground, you see a seesaw. Two children are sitting and both of them are enjoying. So as long as both of them are in equilibrium, the seesaw will go up and the seesaw will go down. So now the going of the seesaw up or down will depict the derangement, as a result of which the disease will occur because of the noxious environmental factors. So in a seesaw, we try to maintain the equilibrium, but however, the environmental factors are constantly bombarding, so it is not possible to maintain the equilibrium, and the seesaw will either tilt either to the right side or to the left side, and the disequilibrium will take place. So therefore, in a nutshell, in short, it means it is a borderline state between normality and abnormality, or between normal susceptibility and a disease condition. So diathesis is nothing but a state between the normal susceptibility and the disease conditions, and the diathesis is nothing but the traits of the miasm which the patient may exhibit in his history. Now, disease. The word disease means lack of ease, not at ease, or absence of ease. It is of the disordered functioning of the vital force, which is evident through signs and symptoms. So you all know that vital force is deranged and it is evident through the signs and symptoms. It tells us about the earliest changes in the development of the disease. At this stage, the localization has not yet begun, and therefore we are still unable to determine which particular tissue, system, or organ is going to be affected. So initially, at the stage 1, it becomes very difficult to identify the disease. Only when it comes into the stage 2, we are in a position to make out what organ is affected. In stage 3, we'll be able to identify the diagnosis, and in stage 4, the sequelae or complications will be there. Hence, hence initially, the harmonious functioning of the life force is reflected in our feeling of uneasiness. So therefore, whenever a disease starts, it will start with a few unspecific symptoms. This is nothing but a feeling of uneasiness. That's all. Then from there, it will go and you'll get more and more symptoms, maybe common symptoms, and then later on, characteristic or PQRS symptoms. Now, expression, it means something that manifests or symbolizes as seen through signs and symptoms. So expressions, you know, that the vital force cannot be seen or the dynamic nature of disease cannot be seen. It can be only seen through the expressions of the vital force, that is through the signs and symptoms. Now, the expression, it includes the phases at different levels. Now, what do you mean by the phase of disease? It means the different pattern of disease manifestation. So, the diseases are there and how does it manifest itself? So commonly we can classify it into two big groups, that is the acute disease or the acute phase or the chronic phase. However, in our organon textbook, different phases are given, which we will take up later on. Now, different levels of expression. It means the different ways a disease can be presented to a homeopathic physician. So patients come to you with different diseases, with different expressions, and it is only by this expression that the homeopathic physician can find out what is wrong with the patient. It starts right from the functional disorders and may end into a fulminating disease. So it goes from the functional disorders, then it may go to the pathological disorder, then it may go directly to an irreversible pathology, or directly the disease may be a very acute fulminating disease and the patient may die. For example, a sudden myocardial infarction or sudden chest pain, patient clasps the chest with his hands and he collapses, and before you can do anything or reach the patient's house, the patient is already dead. This is an acute fulminating disease. It is a medical emergency. The observant homeopathic physician must accurately perceive in which phase the patient exhibits its symptoms. So this is also very important, that you have to identify the phase of the disease. Why? Why is the phase important to know this, or why is it important to know the phase of the disease? Because each phase will have a different plan of treatment. Okay, so in an acute phase, the treatment will be different. In a chronic phase, it will be different. In a subacute phase, it will be different. In a fulminating phase, it will be different. Or in an alternating, in an intermittent, in an episodic phase, it will be different, and so on. So all these phases are described in the different aphorisms in the organon textbook. So selection of the phasic remedy depends upon the phase or phase of the disease expressed. So suppose, for example, you are treating an acute disease and it is an acute phase. Therefore, you'll know that whatever remedy you are choosing will generally be a superficial acting remedy that is known as the acute remedy. So that's the importance of phase. Let us see how does a disease evolve. So we have seen the first phase. How does the disease evolve from the dynamic plane to the functional plane to the structural plane, the pathological plane. Secondly, we have seen second way of describing is from the predisposition, disposition, diathesis, phases, disease expression. And the third one is that the evolution of the disease, it has a centrifugal evolution. Or the third manner in which we can classify the evolution of disease is that it has a centrifugal evolution. It means that the disease originates from within. That means whatever diseases are there, whatever derangement of vital force is there, is taking place from within the individual. And what are responsible for the disease to develop? Naturally, the three great miasms of Sora, syphilis, and psychosis. Therefore, we say that the disease evolves in a centrifugal manner. So the centrifugal force is the force which starts from the center and it goes to the periphery. Out here, the center is the internal or from within the organism, and when it expresses itself from the center to the periphery, the periphery is seen with respect to the signs and symptoms. Therefore, we say the disease has a centrifugal evolution. For example, in acute disease, we are getting the exciting cause or the acute miasm, which may be recurring or non-recurring. So the main cause of the acute diseases are the miasms, and the other causes which may be responsible for the exaggeration of the disease is the exciting cause. But the main cause is the acute miasm, which originates from within the individual. And for the chronic disease, the fundamental cause has to be identified in the form of the 3-grade chronic miasm. So therefore, we say that the disease has a centrifugal evolution from within outwards. Within meaning what? The miasms, acute and chronic miasms, depending upon the state of the disease. Now let us see how does expression of the disease evolve. So it is just the opposite. It has a centripetal evolution. Centripetal meaning what? Going from the periphery coming to the center, opposite of centrifugal. It means that the disease will first express itself from the skin, mucous membranes, serous membranes, then go to vital organs, which will last get affected. So out here, the disease may start from the skin. Then if it is suppressed, it will travel inwards from the skin, mucous membranes, serous membranes, vital organs. So in other words, it may travel from less important organs to more important organs, from the periphery to the center, from the skin to the mucous membranes or serous membranes. So therefore, we are seeing the disease expression, that is the signs and symptoms which the patient exhibits as a centripetal evolution. That means it goes from the less important organs to the more important organs, or goes from the periphery to the center. Now let us see a flow chart which will describe all these terms with respect to evolution of a disease which has just been described. So this is a chart which I made. You all can see it carefully and see the evolution of the disease. As I've told you, I described various terminologies like the predisposition, disposition, diathesis, disease, expression, phases, and the levels. Okay, the levels I haven't described in this video. It will be in the subsequent video. So therefore, as I told you, the predisposition is nothing but the fundamental miasm obtained from where? From the family history. The disposition, the synonyms are also known as type, typology, constitution. It is inherited from the family history, but mainly it is acquired. Now, diathesis is there. It is a disordered state of health between normal symptoms, between normality and abnormality, or written here, disordered state of health but normal symptoms of disease, between normal symptoms of the disease. As I told you, diathesis is a state between normal susceptibility and the disease condition. Now, out here the disease, as I told you, the disease will be there, which goes through many phases. It can go to the pre-functional phase, functional phase, structural phase, post-dynamic. So starts from the post-dynamic, then the pre-functional, functional, and so on. Then the expressions are seen, that is nothing but the signs and symptoms. Then we get the phases of the disease, like acute phase, chronic phase, subacute phase, or the terminal phase, and the different levels of expression, which we'll see later on. So, as I told you, the disease will express itself through signs and symptoms. That means what? It has a centripetal evolution. That means it goes from the periphery to the center, from the skin, mucous membranes, serous membranes, and vital organs. Whereas the evolution of the disease will be centrifugal in nature. That means what? Evolution will start from within. That is within meaning what? From the family history, supported by the disposition, that is the traits on the mental level, on the physical level as well as the constitutional level. So therefore, the disease will evolve centrifugally from within outwards. So therefore, the arrow is kept like this. So in our clinic, when we see the patient, we see the patients mainly at this level. So the patients can come to us by expressions, any of the expressions, like means, for example, he can come in a functional stage, he can come in a structural stage, he can come where there's an all-round picture of the disease, or he can come in an obscure case, in an obscure picture, or where there are maze of symptoms, etc., etc. So at this level, we are seeing the patient at the different levels of expression. Then we have to trace the picture of the disease by seeing what is the phase of the disease, what is the expression of the disease, then what is the disposition and the predisposition of the patient. So from below, we are going upwards to treat the correct evolution of the disease. So now I've told you, in short, the evolution of the disease can be expressed in three ways. Number one, dynamic plane to the functional plane, to the structural plane, to the pathological plane. Secondly, from the predisposition to the disposition to the diathesis to the disease through the levels, through the expression, and through the levels. Or the disease can be expressed either in an centripetal or centrifugal manner. Disease evolves centrifugally from within outwards. Expressions evolve centripetally from periphery to the center, or from less important organs to the more important organs. So, in short, this is about the evolution of the disease. Now, why is it important to know the evolution of the disease? Number one, it will help you to trace the sequential evolutionary march of events. It will help you to trace the characteristic expressions of the case, which in turn, which will help you to find out the totality of the symptoms and to find out the correct simillimum. Not only that, you can also learn miasms with respect to the predisposition, the disposition, the diathesis, and the expression. Okay, so this is the importance of knowing the evolution of the disease. So I hope you enjoyed the lecture, and I hope it is beneficial for you all. Thank you very much.